Good afternoon. We have two extraordinary meetings today. Please note that today's proceedings will be recorded and published online following the general election. During the meeting today, I will be making rulings on process and conduct during the meeting. I would ask Council to abide by the standing orders and rules of debate. At certain times, I may seek guidance from my advisors should we need to adjourn. I will inform the Council of what is happening and of a time for us to reconvene. We all enjoy robust, respectful debate. If members' speeches run over time allocated, I will allow you to finish your sentence, but ask you to finish as quickly as possible. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind members that there is no local government equivalent of parliamentary privilege. Members will therefore be liable for any defamatory statements they may make. All votes will be conducted via the electronic voting system today. The available time to cast your votes is 20 seconds. Thank you. Before we begin, it is with great sadness that we note the passing of Mr. Eddie Rennie and Mr. Johnny Morris. Eddie served the city for 25 years and was a ward councillor for Sutton and Mount Gould. The posthumous award of Alderman, which is before you today, is not just in recognition of the time Eddie has given up, it also reflects his relentless focus on the safety of the citizens of Plymouth, particularly in his role on the licensing committee. Eddie spent a major part of his life working for the people of Plymouth, and he will be greatly missed. Johnny served the Southway ward of Plymouth for 9 years, from 2013 until his retirement in 2022. Johnny brought his sharp intellect to the proceedings of the Planning Committee and Licensing Committee and was the chair of the Brexit and Legislative Change Security Panel following the referendum in 2016. A strong character, his absence will be deeply felt by friends and colleagues. Both men were excellent advocates for the city. Please stand with me in silence as a mark of respect. Thank you. The purpose of the first meeting is to confer honorary alderman status on former councillors, Mr. Eddie Rennie, Mr. Mark Share, and Mr. Ian Tuffin. I move to items 1. Apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've apologies from Councillor Dan Wood, Councillor Matt Smith and Councillor Bridgman.
Are there any further apologies? Thank you. Can members please make it known by raising their hand, please, if they have any private or disclosable pecuniary interests in any of the matters on today's agenda. My advisor will take a record of the interests declared. No? Thank you. Appointment of the Honorary Alderman. Councillor Tudor Evans OBE, Leader of the Council, I understand you are introducing the motion. No. Oh, I beg your pardon, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a point of order. Lord Mayor, I'd like it to be known this afternoon that I can support the Labour nominations for Alderman, but I can't support the nomination for the Conservatives. And I was wondering if we could take it as separate votes, please. Lord Mayor, I did request that we could take it as separate votes. Is that possible, please?
No, I'm afraid not.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed, Lord Mayor. I'm speaking to rise in support of all three of our Honorary Alderman, which we're about to grant today, in line with the rules in the Constitution that we have. All three served this city with distinction. All three are deserving of the accolade, and it is just so sad that we're not able to be here today with Eddie to hear what we've got to say about him. I would like to say in tribute to my good friend Ian Tuffin that I've known him for longer than we both care to remember, I should imagine. I've known Ian since he was a trade unionist official at the Blue Circle Cement Works with people like Bob Gatchigan and Coyley. And when they all came on together, I think it was 1991 election, the insurgency that took place then. And of course, that was a very interesting period in our history as a council, because it was the first time in 25 years that Labour had taken control of the council. So it was fantastic that Ian was able to be a part of that. And then, of course, he had a semi-retirement from the council, during which time he reinvented himself as a care worker, helping people, particularly adults with learning difficulties, to have experiences and to have joy in their lives. And actually, that's something that Ian Tuffin is very good at, was giving people joy in their lives, whether it was his constituents in his ward of St. Peter and the Waterfront, whether it was his colleagues on the council who he entertained and who we listened to with great interest about his opinions about football. He had many opinions about football, some of which were right, and many of which were sadly wrong. But what I can say is this, is that Ian was brilliant in our cabinet. When he took the portfolio of adult social care, he did a superb job. And everything that we ever asked him to do in the council, he pitched in, and he did his duty. He did his duty to his constituents, he did his duty to the Labour Party, and he did his duty to the city that he loves. And we already miss you, mate. And I wish you were still here more often. And I could say the same about Councillor Eddie Rennie. It's just not fair after so many years' service, whether it's on the bins or whether it's in uniform or whether it's in this council chamber, that he only had 3 weeks to enjoy his retirement, his well-earned retirement. It was very difficult for all of us. We're sad that he left the council, of course. We were sad that he stood down. I just wanted to say a few things about what he's achieved, because you need to understand that the role of Chief Whip in this council is unpaid. Actually, it's not a council position as such, but it's one without which the council could not operate. The measure of respect that Eddie enjoyed was because of his work across the aisle, which he had to do. Everybody on that side respected him. Didn't always agree with what he had to say, but respected him and knew that he was doing it all for the right reasons. He kept us on the straight and narrow. And as I say, his role as a chief whip was fantastic. And of course, because he was a chief whip in our party, you can't be in the cabinet and be the chief whip. But that didn't mean that he didn't do things for the council in senior leadership positions. And of course, his work on both the licensing committee, the miscellaneous, and the taxis. I mean, there are taxi drivers in this city that feared Eddie, Quite right too, because he operated without fear or favour, and he did the right thing, and he kept people on the straight and narrow in a taxi trade, and that was really important. So that thing around public safety, which was in the taxis, but also in his work on the licensing committee as well. I mean, you mustn't forget that Eddie was really, really a big supporter of the nighttime economy. A lot of people in Plymouth don't realise that. They think he was always out to get club owners, but actually what he was about was making sure that people who went out for a night out came home safe and came home unharmed. So he brought in the rules around shatterproof glasses in the city's pubs and clubs. That saved loads of people from going to hospital and ending up with bad memories about nights out instead of good memories. And then there was the stuff he did in his ward as well, and I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about that at the funeral on Thursday, but I wanted to say he worked hard for his residents as well as for the city and for the Labour Party. We miss him, we will always miss him, and we're always grateful for what he did for us. Mark, I'm going to ask Andy to talk a bit more about yourself, but I wanted to say that you were superb last year in the Lord Mayor's chair. You did a great job, and you did a great job for your party and this council by stepping into the breach in your party and leading it as well. And we on this side are very grateful to you for what you did for your party, for this council chamber, and for the city of Plymouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Lugger, I understand you will be seconding the motion. Would also like to say a few words.
I thank you, my Lord Mayor. Indeed, it's an honour to second this motion. Firstly, may I just say, I always associate Councillor Tuffin with scrutiny, a keen scrutineer who always kept us in order at overview. So that's how I will always remember you. Of course, as Councillor Evans has alluded to, you were involved in taxi licensing and also adult social care, and you were cabinet member for health and adult social care. Certainly, with taxi licensing, I've recently been appointed to that committee, so if I only had half your skills, I'm sure I'll do well. Councillor Shea, Mark was born in Gosport. His father was in the Royal Navy as a chief stoker. Mark's infant time was down here in the Tamar Valley. He went to the Royal Naval School Hospital, which I believe, Mark, is colloquially known as the cradle of the Royal Navy. Is that right? Joined the service himself, 25 years in the RN, first as a skimmer and then in the submarine service. Mark, of course, is married to Sam, and who's a keen politician now that she's married to Mark, and the Cornish lass, and proud of his achievements. Mark has 4 generations, believe it or not, living in his ward of Budshead. And that must be quite entertaining on a Sunday afternoon, no doubt. Mark, when he retired from the RN, joined Babcock as a project engineer, and then in 2020, when he retired from that, decided to embark upon a political career. Elected to Budshead in 2021, Mark, in the short time that he served on this authority, has gained the respect and worked hard for the residents in Budshead Ward. Mark has managed, ladies and gentlemen, to condense a whole political career into 1 term, which in the 36 years I've been involved in local politics, I think that's pretty much unprecedented. If one was to use the analogy of Solomon Grundy, I'm sure members are all aware that Solomon Grundy was the man who was born on a Monday. He was christened on a Tuesday, married on a Wednesday, took ill on a Thursday, and the nursery rhyme goes on to say he died and was buried all in 1 week. If I was to apply that to Mark, it would be something on the lines of elected on a Monday, cabinet on a Tuesday, leader on a Wednesday, Lord Mayor on a Thursday, and Alderman on a Friday. Mark was cabinet member for finance, and he also served on the Fire and Rescue Authority, together with the Four Greens Trust, the Drake Foundation, and he was joint chair of the Mount Edgecombe Trust Board. I've enjoyed my time working with Mark, and certainly We worked closely when he was Lord Mayor as well, a time which he did great service to the city of Plymouth, and I will really miss him in local politics. Finally, Eddie Rennie. My Lord Mayor, I'm humbled to even mention that man's name. Very few people make an indelible mark in life, but Eddie is permanently ingrained on my mind and the minds of councillors present today and ex-members of this authority. Eddie and I did clash. Licensing policy, me representing the licensed victuallers, and Eddie, the strong voice of Plymouth's licensing authority. As Councillor Evans alluded to, he did introduce a policy of reusable plastic glasses, which made mammoth changes to the way people were conducted themselves in licensed premises late at night. He was a supporting member of keeping Plymouth's licensed trade going. He was passionate about it. 25 years as a councillor, 15 of which he was Labour Chief Whip. So Councillor Hendy, you have big boots to fill there, and I'm sure you'll do that admirably. I can honestly say Eddie Rennie is a man who lived, respected, and died regretted. My Lord Mayor, I'm very happy to second the proposition. Thank you.
Thank you both. And now I have the names of two further councillors who wish to speak. Councillor Aspinall.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I congratulate Ian. It's always been a very great pleasure to work with you within the health scrutiny side of things and with the social care. You've taught me a lot and I've listened very carefully. Mark, well done with your year. It's not easy when you weren't expecting to be in that position to do it, so well done from somebody that sat in that chair and knows what a hot chair it is. But I must rise, obviously, to speak about Eddie. Eddie and I stood in a by-election in 2002, and we were successful. What can I say about that by-election? It was one that we fought very hard. One of our aims, led by Tudor, was to make sure we got a zebra crossing up on Lipson Road. We finally got that 10 years later, so I count that as a success. Eddie was, because we had no official how do you get to be a councillor and what do you have to do back in 2002, Eddie was obviously a mentor as far as I was concerned, because he was an old hand. He'd already done 3 years on the council, so he knew it all. What he didn't quite know was how to manage electronic kit. All of our side know Eddie and his electronic kit. He could break a phone within, I would say, probably 3 months. I think he probably very, very rarely used his laptop because he was a little bit concerned of what might happen on that. We can all remember through COVID the fun and games of getting Eddie online. That will live with us for a long, long time. And I think, having had Eddie as my ward partner for 22 years, I feel very, very privileged in having that same person. And I think whilst Patrick might well have had David James with him for a similar length of time, I think some of you have only had partners within your wards for a short time. So, you know, I feel very privileged in that respect. Within the ward work, Eddie had ESP. You could guarantee he would know when something was going on. Whether that was through checking through the social media or what, I'm not too sure, but he knew. He knew when the police helicopter was up that it was something to do with our ward, and I'd get the phone call to say X is happening or Y is happening. I don't know how he managed it, especially when he was wrecking his phones, but still. We all know within the Labour group how Eddie and leafleting, he was the leafleting champion. Claire, his widow, can't be with us today. She is still very, very distraught. And I'm hoping, because this will be recorded, that in time she'll be able to hear what we're saying about him. But he would leave the house at 6 a.m, double backpack, and leaflet just about the whole of Sutton and Mount Gold before we got home of an evening. He was a leafleting legend. He was a very modest man in many respects. I don't think many of us know the full life story. And I know that there are several within the council here that know him much, much better than I do. And they will have some good tales to tell. I am quite convinced of that. But it was when we had a reorganisation in 2003 that we then became Sutton and Mount Goldward, and Jean Nelder joined us. And I think that's when we started Team SMG without realising that that's what we were doing. We each had our own interest and our own thing. Eddie obviously had licensing, I had the health side of things, and Jean was the planning guru. So it worked really well. When Jean stood down, Sue Dan came to join us, and again, it gave that sort of mixed ward approach so that we all knew that one of us could give advice to the other should they need it. Chris, you've obviously got some big boots to fill because Eddie's knowledge, very different again, but you're really welcome, and we hope that we know that Team SMG will go from strength to strength. But the one thing I am very sure about today, Eddie would have hated this fuss. He would be very unhappy with us. But blow to that. We're here to celebrate the contributions he's made to the city of Plymouth and to the people of Sutton and Mount Gold. My only regret is that it's posthumously. So thank you very much, Council, for giving him this honour. He deserved it. And I know Claire values the fact that we're doing that. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Aspinall. I'm taking the speakers in the order of which I have received them, and the next one is Councillor Penberthy, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Mary, it's a privilege to rise as a ward colleague, but before I do anything there, it is so strange to be fighting an election campaign without Eddie in and out of the hall badgering us, and the continual teasing, the phone calls late at night and early in the morning. Have you spotted this? Do you know that? What are you doing about this? I think he will always be missed. And Mark, well done. I know I've picked up bits that you've picked up, and we've worked on some of the same things, and it's all been difficult, but well done for everything you've done on the council. But today, I want to share some thoughts on my sort of former ward colleague, Ian Tuffin. It's easy to say that a councillor is popular, respected and committed, but you go and knock on the doors of St Peter's and people know Ian, and they trust Ian. They value Ian for his wisdom and his humour, for the common sense he brought to things, and for the compassion he showed to absolutely everybody he came across. At an organisational level, he was a valued governor at St Peter's School while the council was still able to appoint governors there. Millfield's Trust and Millfield's Inspired, he was a director of one and a trustee of the other, miss his wisdom at their meetings. Michelle and the women at Edgecombe Street will always have Ian as a hero, because the Manor Street Play Park finally got the equipment replaced because Ian badgered and badgered for years and years and years. He's quietly worked around the ward, and he actually hasn't stopped. My ward colleagues have asked me to say thank you because of the mentoring and support he's given them since their elections. Councillor Rainsford, since Alderman MacDonald retired, and Lewis more recently. He cares about people. He cares about people fulfilling their potential and wants to support that. And actually, he still cares for St Peter's. And a couple of weekends ago, he was out in Adelaide Street Park on the Adelaide Street Angels Fun Day. He's not a ward councillor. but he was there because he knew and he valued the people. And he's badgering about the fact that that notice board still hasn't been replaced and his community grant was put into it, and it will be replaced, Ian. We'll make sure it is, because Ian isn't the sort of person who just walks away. So whilst he's retired, we know we haven't seen the last of Ian, and he is well and truly worthy of the honour of Alderman. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Pemberley. I'm now call on Councillor Patrick Nicholson.
Good afternoon, Lord Mayor, members of the Council. Well, I'm very pleased to rise and speak on the propositions before us, given the fact that, notwithstanding the legislation was passed in 1972, I believe the City Council commemorated former councillors from 1984. So it's been a tradition now of the Council to recognise eminent service of former councillors, and I think it's a good tradition that the City Council should continue to do. Notwithstanding what the leader of the Council and the leader of the opposition have said, the contributions by former ward members I think are very, very important, because partnership working from a ward level, but also in the City Council and on behalf of the City Council and the community, is fundamental to the work of being a successful City Councillor. And what we've seen of those members being honoured today is a massive contribution at all levels in the multiple roles that councillors perform as members of this authority. And I'd like to particularly pay tribute to Councillor, and I always say this, Ian, to Ian Tuffin. Having been a councillor for most of the time that I've been here, unfortunately he did suffer a holiday for a period, as some of us tend to do in politics, when the public decide that you need a rest. Ian did come back. Very few councillors actually do come back, but Ian did come back for a long period of time, and that's a credit to Ian. I always remember Ian, when he was first elected, he was a bit in the mould of you, Councillor Evans, quite a firebrand. I would suggest more of a left-wing Labour councillor than perhaps others of his sort of peer group. But what Ian's done over the years, he's matured to ensure that all members of the council are embraced by him in our respective views and our roles, because ultimately, whilst we might not agree with each other, we should respect each other for the views that we convey, because we're doing it in the most sincere way on behalf of the people that put us here, the electorate. And clearly in a diverse city like Plymouth, there are going to be multitudes of different points of view. And that's one of the greatest things with Ian, is that as he evolved his role on the council, he embraced all points of view. And I was delighted when he actually, and picking up on Councillor Pemberley's point, when I did have some responsibility for upgrading children's play areas, Ian did contact me, and we had a site meeting, and one of his play areas, it might have been the Manor Street play area for all I know, but we certainly resolved the issue, and Ian was good enough to actually, rather than be tribal, to actually do what he could for his electors, whoever was in charge of the council. And you will be missed, Ian. The greatest contribution that an honorary alderman can play is still to be part of the city family. You are still invited to civic events, and it's only sad that we don't see too many aldermen, particularly in older years, attending civic events, because they're always most welcome. We are a family. You've made a massive contribution, and you should continue to do so, perhaps in a less strenuous way as an honorary alderman. I would conclude my remarks, if I may, by saying how sad I am at Eddie Rennie's death, because this event shouldn't be taking place today without Eddie being present. Certainly the leader of the council, Councillor Evans, said a bit about the role of Chief Whip, which is an enormous role in any group, particularly when that group fluctuates in size, and particularly the bigger the group, the harder the task. But Eddie, in many ways, whether hopefully you don't take this the wrong way through your Lord Mayor, Councillor Evans, that he was your diplomat at times, trying to smooth the waters for those who are not part of the majority group, part of the Labour group. And that's an immense role, because the business of the council does need a certain amount of working together for it to operate properly. And Eddie can never really be given the esteem with which he carried out that role over a long period of time. He was always open to conversation, discussion, and to take on board wherever he could. the points of view that you put over. So I'm very saddened, and I speak on behalf of my of the independent colleagues, that we're saddened that Eddie isn't here today, and send our condolences. Lord Mayor, certainly the positions of Honorary Alderman are significant, and I hope very much that the council will support certainly the two that I've referred to in the proposition today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Now I have one left. Councillor Stevens, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Lord Mayor. All three nominees before us today are richly deserving of the award which we're hopefully about to bestow. But I did want to say one or two words about Eddie Rennie in particular. I first met Eddie, or we met each other, first of all, when I was at school, and over the next 32 years, our political lives had a funny habit of running in parallel, including the last 25 that we served together as councillors. Everything that's been said about him is true. He was a committed servant to this city, to his ward in particular, and to all his friends, which I'm privileged to count myself among, hopefully. He did all of that without being in any way flash about it. That's what I will remember most of all. He got on with the work and expected absolutely zero plaudits for it. It's a testament to how effective he was, I think, as a chief whip, that nothing could strike fear into Labour councillors' heart more than the words "missed call from Eddie Rennie." That was certainly true for me. He knew the ropes of this authority like no one else. He knew how the cogs turned, and he knew how this place ticks. And if anyone has that knowledge to that degree in the future, I will be very, very surprised. He was a very, very loyal friend whose judgment I always respected, and he was always keen to reminisce about the night 24 years ago when he and I and a number of others lost our seats before some of us made a comeback. But that was a tough night for Eddie, and a tough night for me, and a tough night for other colleagues. And we all went back to the place I was living with a few people just to cry into our beers and so forth. Being a loyal friend in victory, Lord Mayor, is easy. Eddie was a loyal friend in defeat. And the fact that he was a constant in this chamber, I think, speaks volumes about his commitment to this city of ours. I can't remember a council meeting until March when he wasn't sat in this chamber. His service to this city wasn't one of glory and fireworks, but without him, this city and this council would be a lot poorer. I will miss my regulatory committee buddy, and I will miss my good friend, and I hope his family can take some comfort from the words and affection that have been expressed this afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen. Are there any other members who wish to speak? Right, Leader, do you wish to sum up?
Lord Mayor, I don't think so. Let's have the vote now, please.
Thank you. We shall now move to the vote then to pass this resolution of Council to confer Honorary Alderman station on Mr. Eddie Rennie, Mr. Ian Tuffin and Mr. Mark Share. We'll move to the vote now. Please vote using the buttons on your unit. Green for favour, red against and amber to abstain. That's carried with one abstention. Thank you. On behalf of the Council, I would like to offer Mr Tuffin and Mrs Share our congratulations and thanks for the public service, not just in this chamber, but across their working lives. Mr Tuffin, is there anything you wish to say? Alderman Tuffin, I beg your pardon. I've been corrected on all sides, sorry.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm very grateful to have this bestowed upon me. It feels very important. But rather than being a joyous occasion, I feel there's someone missing here, and you all knew it is Eddie. So I will be quite somber because I think it's a really sad occasion that he's not in that chair. So I would like to take the chance to pay respects to him and his family, because I think it's important that we remember what a character he was. And today we've had many examples of that. And I'd also like to thank the full council for kindly voting to make me an alderman. And you, Lord Mayor, it's especially special because of you being in the chair. This may be your first meeting, council, but I've known you a long time, and you've been a good friend and a wonderful colleague. So that adds value to being made an alderman with you. And I'd like the opportunity to say thank you to a lot of people because, as I say, it's a bit somber because of the sad demise of Eddie. But there's a lot of people to say thank you to. And on an up note, I've loved every minute of it. I really enjoyed it. So don't let anybody ever tell you it's not good fun. But, that's because I've been surrounded by wonderful people, wonderful friends, over many, many years. And I've seen new faces here, and I know how exciting it is. I still remember that. So I think the future bodes well for this council with so many committed people, and I'm grateful for that. But I'd like to also say thank you to those people out in the community that don't get to stand here and be honoured like this. The Adley Street Angels, Matt and Nikki, who every month come out and work for their community. And in Plymouth, and I hope it's a Plymouth thing because it really is important that people do commit to their community. And I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to each and every one of them. But especially, I'd like to say thank you to Tudor, who has been a good friend, probably well over 34 years. And it's so wonderful to see the Jones Bannerman legend going on. So that fills me with hope, fills me with enthusiasm, and I'm eternally grateful for the opportunities I've had to serve. But last but not least, council officers who have always supported, always helped, and have always shown a true belief in service to Plymouth. So I think we shouldn't forget them when we get these honours, because they achieved it with us. So thank you to them. And if I may, just on a small personal level, say, because I want you to know I don't take myself seriously, but there's one young person that I want to mention, and she's called Inca, and I just want to send her a message. From today, it's got to be Alderman, Grandad. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Tuffin. Now, Alderman Share, would you like to speak?
Wow, that was a speech to follow. Alderman Tuffin, well done, well done. It is a huge honour and a privilege to be stood here today, certainly amongst yourselves and for those people that you represent in Plymouth. To have had the privilege to come and represent the people in my ward first days, and thereafter, the people in Plymouth, in all the jobs that I've done, has been a huge, huge honour. It's been a culmination of things that I've been trying to do for most of my life. And it was nice when I became a councillor to come in amongst you, those who were councillors at the time, and find that actually every single one of you had the same thoughts in life, which was to do your best for the people of Plymouth. So thank you very much for being as collegiate as you were across the whole of this chamber. Everybody has been good. Everybody has had the right direction in their minds, the same direction as myself. And thank you very much for all the help and assistance that you've given me, because it is a steep learning curve. It really and truly is a steep learning curve. So thank you very much for the words that there's been spoken today about me. And as Alderman Tuffin here said, the only shadow on today is that someone who was a great mentor to me, because he was a good person to go and ask advice from when I couldn't get the answer from my side, was I used to sit and have a chat with Eddie, and he was a good person to talk to. He was always sage words, and it's just a shame that I'm not sharing this day with him. So, but thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you very much, Alderman Chair. This meeting is now closed, and we move to the second extraordinary meeting for today to consider electoral arrangements. And I move to item 1, this meeting, apologies. Are there any apologies for absent?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We have apologies from Councillors Dan, Woods, Councillor Bridgman and Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. Are there any, can members please make it known by raising their hand, please, if they have any private or disclosable pecuniary interests at any of the matters in today's agenda. My advisor will take a record of the interests declared. None. Thank you very much. Right. Before we begin the debate, I would like to propose that we suspend standing orders to move into committee to enable the Chief Executive to introduce the report and answer any questions on the report. Deputy Lord Mayor, will you second my motion?
I second your motion, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. We'll move to the vote now. Please vote using the buttons on your unit. Green for favour, red against, and amber to abstain. Thank you. Councillor, the motion is carried. Chief Executive.
Just in case. That's right, you can carry on now.
Okay, right, thank you. My eyesight has never been brilliant. You'll have to bear with me. Right. Chief Executive, would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Council will be aware that in November 2021, the Boundary Commission made contact with us to let us know that we were due a ward review. This is something that happens about every 20 years, and Councillor Mary Aspinall has just mentioned the last one in the speech she gave. And the purpose of the Boundary Commission coming in and doing this work is to look at the number of councillors we have on the council, but also to look at the ward arrangements, the number of wards and the boundaries of those wards. It's a very prescriptive process, and the process is described in the report you have before you. We are in the first stage, the early stages of the review. The review will take some time to complete. And this first stage is the submission that you make to the Boundary Commission about the total number of councillors that you would like to see on Plymouth City Council. And in coming to the view of the total number of councillors, there are a number of areas that are taken into account. Certainly, very importantly, is the growth of the city, both in terms of population, but also housing growth in the city. The data that you'll see in the report, but also will be more widely available as, when we get into the second stage of the review, really shows you where those centres of growth are in the city. And that creates areas, wards where there are higher numbers of electors, and the ratio of councillors in the wards. But very importantly, alongside that is the work that you do, and we've taken an opportunity to discuss with you through a survey, through all the work we've collated about the nature of the work you do, both as ward members, but also your involvement in committees, in outside bodies, discussing policy, both regionally and nationally, to make sure that the submission really sets out the option and the number of councillors that you believe will be necessary to undertake the work. And that report is before you today. If you agree to this proposal, we'll make the submission to the Boundary Commission. I need to pause there and then move on to an issue that is separate but related, and that is the review of the electoral cycle. So we have an electoral review, but we also, you agreed in November 2022 that we would undertake a public engagement exercise about the electoral cycle, and in January 24 you agreed that that should run concurrently with the next stage of the boundary review, which is where the Boundary Commission would come in and ask for proposals for the warding arrangements. In the further conversations we've had with the Boundary Commission, now that we are in a process, they tend to have quite a long lead-in time, but we are now in that process. They've been very clear with us that they would like us to complete the review of the Council's electoral cycle before they embark on the next stage of the process. So the recommendations before you are set out in 3.3. I'm going to just discuss them in a slightly different order. Firstly, the second recommendation will be to approve the council size submission, and I hope that's before you today. What we would then like to do is to delegate to the Audit and Governance Committee that they review and finalise the consultation process for the electoral review. And the next Audit and Governance meeting is in July, so that would happen in July. And clearly we'll need to communicate and engage and continue to engage with the Boundary Commission about that, so that the second phase of the electoral review will fit in after the timescale and your consideration of the electoral cycle. So hopefully that's straightforward, but I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. If I may ask the Chief Executive, just in relation to, obviously there are a number of phases, Mrs. Lee, that we're going through. So you alluded to the fact that Audit and Governance will look at the process in relation to all our elections or elections by thirds. Could you just clarify the guidance from the Electoral Commission around the numbers, whether the number of councillors affects the cycle for which the local authority can commit to, and whether the decision we take today does have ramifications for the next phase, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholson. So the total number of councillors is separate to the warding pattern for councillors. So this submission is about the size of the whole council related to the work levels that you have.
Well, I probably didn't express my question properly. So the decision that the council will take at some stage, whether we have all-out elections or elections by thirds, is that to some extent dependent on the number and size of the council in totality? hopefully that will be clear.
Yeah, so sorry. So in relation, the Boundary Commission have a view that generally, if you have all-out elections, then you can have a mixed warding pattern, which means a mixed number of members per ward. If you elect in thirds, they consider there should be a uniform pattern unless there are exceptional circumstances. So that phase will come later on.
Thank you. Councillor Lugger, I believe you wish to speak.
I thank you, my Lord Mayor. The Office of National Statistics suggests that the city's population is growing and it will likely to rise to 268,882 by 2030. So therefore, I have no criticism of increasing the size of the council in line with the paper, assuming, of course, there's 60, there is going to be some mixed wards, but that is something where the devil is in the detail when we get to phase 2, which is the mapping of the wards. The point I wish to bring to council today, to the attention of members, and please, Councillor Allen, this is not a rebuke or criticism of audit and governance,
Through you,
Chair.
Lord Mayor. So, apologies, Councillor. We are just doing questions to the Chief Executive at the moment, so if there is a question, but you'll have the chance to make a speech shortly.
Okay, thank you. I will defer until later. Thank you.
Right, are there any further questions? Right, so Lisa, would you like to move the recommendation, please?
Thank you very much indeed, Lord Mayor. First of all, could I thank the Electoral Services team who, in between preparing for the general election and the local elections, have also had to work on this. It's a small but perfectly formed team, and I pay tribute to the skill with which they put this together. First and foremost, though, I need to thank the council because members who are no longer with us and members that are, of course, have also contributed to the paperwork, having been surveyed by the Electoral Services team as to your outputs as councillors. The interesting thing about all of this, of course, is that it's still on the basis, it will be on the basis of numbers of voters. And of course, there still isn't a system that counts workload in that calculation, nor is there a function of the fact that it's households that we deal with. I mean, part of the issue with our workload is that we may have a population that's stagnant, as it were, in terms of growth, but you have household growth, and that means more work for councillors, because that's how it works. But this is the system we've got, and we have responded to the science rather than the feelings on this subject. By mapping exactly what councillors have been doing that's different now from 23 years ago. I mean, if you just think about the number of partnerships, for example, that we're involved in, the number of outside bodies, the level of decision making, and the range of decisions that we had to make. I mean, there used to be speeches in this council saying that isn't a matter for council, it's a matter for the police. But now it's unthinkable that we don't have a view on antisocial behaviour or the consequences of it and working on solutions to it. It's unfathomable to think now that we aren't intimately involved in developing strategies for economic growth, for planning, for transport, for social services, for adult social care, for working with our partners in health. The work of a councillor now is much more complex than it was 23 years ago when we did this last time. The frowns on your faces would indicate, and the bags under your eyes would indicate that your outputs are, and you could do with a little bit more help. And this is what this is about. It's going to make it easier for voters as we continue to grow to see their councillor. If we did nothing, if we stayed as we were, that would be harder. And that would mean that councillors would have to do even longer hours than they do at the moment. And as you know, recruiting to council and getting people to come forward is getting increasingly difficult with the pressures that are put upon us. So we make no apologies for asking for more people to come to the aid of the party. We make no apologies for saying that we need more councillors now than we've ever needed before, because our city is growing, it's healthy, it's vibrant, but what is growing is the problems that people are having and the amount of work that we as councillors have to put in to solving them. So I move, and I hope that the council will support our submission to the Commission on the number of councillors going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Allen, I understand you will be seconding the report. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to speak?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I second the motion and I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Yes, Councillor Lugger, please. Councillor Lugger, please come in.
My apologies, Lord Mayor, for jumping on the political bandwagon prematurely. I do apologise to the Chamber. I've rehearsed the beginning argument. Certainly, yes, I agree with Councillor Evans. There is a need with a growing population to increase the size of the council. I'm just mindful of the fact we need to see how the warding arrangements are going to take place on phase 2, so no political party is disadvantaged. The point I wish to make, and as I say, is no criticism at all, Councillor Allen, no rebuke. In paragraph 3.1 of the report to 3.3, there are certain points which have been left out, which is important to bring to the Chamber today. Paragraph 3.1 of your report, members, states, in November 2022, full council agreed to undertake a public engagement consultation on the issue of moving from the current electoral cycle to elections, to hold council elections once every 4 years. Well, with the greatest of respect, the statement omits the fundamental words that I brought to this chamber on the 21st of November 2022, when I said that the consultation had to take place between June and August 2023. The reason I put that in there is at the time we were briefed by the Boundary Commission that we had to get this process dealt with before the boundary review could take place, hence my call for urgency. Paragraph 3.2 of the paper states that the Boundary Commission has now confirmed that it will not conduct its own consultation process until such time as the Council has concluded its own consultation on electoral cycles, and the decision, one way or the other, is made by full Council. Everything was in place in January 2023, including the task and finish group which I chaired, which put all the questions in place. The entire procedure was ready to roll in the time frame stipulated. However, the meeting of this council in January 2024 unpicked that arrangement. Now, I'm happy to support this paper, but I would suggest that when we file the submissions tomorrow, which is a deadline for this, that somewhere in 3.3 we make some sort of apology to the Boundary Commission for delaying the process, and an undertaking from this council that we will continue it without further ado. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lugger. I now have Councillor Poyser. Please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to also echo Councillor Evans's statement around the preparation of this report. I know that the election team have been working their socks off with the local elections and now the general election, and they've also somehow miraculously found the time to be working on this document as well, which was being presented towards us today to pass. I also wanted to just highlight the fact that there is a real need for additional councillors within this city, as also been mentioned by Councillor Evans. The amount of work that's undertaken by councillors, how we receive work from different channels, from different avenues, whether it being from WhatsApp, from whether it be through Facebook or email or phone calls. Even receive phone calls these days as well still, yes. Yes, and that need is increasing as people, we have an ageing population. We still have, unfortunately, high levels of deprivation in parts of this city as well. And those are challenges that sadly aren't going away, and that's going to put more pressure on us as individuals. So yes, there will be at some point, someone will say out there when they look at this report, when it goes online, why do we need more councillors? And quite clearly, this report sets out the reasons why we need to do that. I'm happy with the number, 60. It's clearly been benchmarked in there as well. Where those numbers land within the city, obviously, we've got a next stage of this process. We've got the boundary review element, which comes in where we draw upon data, population data and growth data, where houses are going to be built, where they're not going to be built. Where those numbers land is quite important, I think, as well. It does say in here, towards the end of the report, that councillors broadly agree with 3-member wards, and I think I could give a nod to that. But let's not forget there are 2-member wards out there, and some people reading this report might automatically assume that those 2-member wards become 3-member wards, and that is not the case. This is subject to the boundary review itself. I would like to say at this stage, though, before we get on to the review itself, that within Plympton we have quite a unique situation where we do have 2-member wards in this part of the world. We are hemmed in by a rather big road, the A38 and the Plym as well, which is a nice river, actually, isn't it? You should spend a bit of time down there by the banks. As a result of that, we have 7 councillors out this way. And I'd just like to make a statement to say that I think that as we go through this process of reviewing boundaries, that I think that we can't be underrepresented in Plympton. I think we need to be looking at an absolute minimum of 7 councillors within this side of the city, as an ageing population in the east of the city. But thank you, Lord Mayor. That's all I need to say.
Just one moment, please. You have a point of order, leader.
My point of order was that we were supposed to be talking about the number of councillors, not where they were. That's all I was saying.
Okay. Councillor Patrick Nicholson, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, members of the council. Well, I rise actually to have a contrary view, because what we haven't heard from any of the councillors who have spoken so far is the perennial problem of the lack of finance to run local government services. We've not talked about the cost of 3 extra councillors or the cost of democracy. Neither have we actually addressed the fact that the paper stipulates quite clearly the roles and responsibilities of the council, and those with the majority of responsibility being cabinet members, the number won't change. I think it's set by legislation. So we're looking at 3 extra backbench members of the council effectively, at a time when we've got 57, there's a projection of a slight growth in population. So we have basically in the papers an indication that if we increase the council by 3, that's to dispel existing councillors from having 128 extra electors. So on one hand, we effectively say we've never got enough money to deliver adult social care to those that need help, children's services, all the plethora of services that are street services, because we feel that we want more councillors. And then you look at the report and you look at identification of councillors by ward. So you take Stoke Ward, only 45% of the population of Stoke recognise the Stoke Ward. You look at Efford and Lipson, 51%. But you look at some wards, like my own of Plympton St Mary, 78%, Radford, 80%. So there's a major discrepancy between the identification by the general public of their wards and their councillors, and yet we're saying we need more councillors. I don't think, Lord Mayor, there's a compelling argument being given by the council today to increase the number of councillors. What we should be doing is actually trying to manage the public's expectations, because the public generally think that whenever they ask for something, that generally the council can deliver. So actually expectation management would be far better an approach than actually trying to put more councillors in office for them to be struggling with delivering the aspirations of the local community like we have over the last few years. And it's it's quite interesting to see the process that new councillors now follow compared to those that have been here a bit longer, where we're expecting new councillors to be really to use systems to deal with casework, when actually good old conversation and discussion with council officers from time to time is the order of the day to resolve issues, not sticking in a computer system. And actually the computer often says no because there aren't the resources to undertake the work that's being asked by the council on behalf of their community. So there's a huge issue here, and it's sad to an extent, Lord Mayor, for the council to be having it in the midst of a general election and following a local election. We should have probably had more debate about the real significance and importance of increasing by 3 counties. It sends the wrong message. It's saying Plymouth needs bigger government on less and less and less resources. And any incoming Labour government's not going to be in any different position to the existing Conservative government in terms of resources. I don't hear a dicky bird out of the major political parties on increasing local government finance and giving more resources for councillors to do what we do far better in many respects than central government. We deliver at the coalface, probably pound for pound, much more efficiently than the way the government distributes many of their special grants to local government and prescribe it in a manner which costs a lot of inefficiency. So I think, to aid debate, Lord Mayor, I don't support the proposition that's being put today. There isn't a compelling argument. We'll morph into it because the numbers are such where the council will agree it, but it isn't necessarily the best decision for the City of Plymouth. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Lydia, do you wish to sum up? Another one. I beg your pardon, Councillor. And would you like to speak now?
Just to say, I think I would just like to thank Councillor Lugger for his benevolence today and not scolding me. Thank you. Oh, beg your pardon. So, yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Lugger. I have some sympathy with Councillor Nicholson's point, but I think there have been plenty of opportunities to feed into this plan and submission, and again, very happy to second this going forward.
Thank you very much. Leader, do you wish to sum up?
Yes, indeed. As I say, I don't particularly myself agree with Councillor Nicholson's peroration. We're here to talk specifically around the numbers of councillors. That bit of it, I think I would say to you is this, is people have a misunderstanding about what councillors do, and as councillors we've got a choice. We can either let people know what it is we do, or we can play along with those that say we should shrink the size of government. Now that depends on your political point of view. You're a small government person, I'm a big government person. But let's not infect this debate with that. This is about service to the public. This is about making sure that people who need us can get us. And it's also a recognition of the fact that Plymouth Council modus operandi has changed out of all recognition from where we were 23 years ago. And if you remember 23 years ago, the Boundary Commission told us we were having 57. They told us without any question that we were now going to have 57 instead of 60, and at a stretch, ripped out of the inner city of this city, councillors who had served their communities with distinction. So I don't want to get into that debate. What I want to get into the debate about is, do we need more of us, and why? If it was just a question of number from number's sake, then I think I'll probably go along with it. But it's not about that. It's about the changing pattern of the work we do. And it's also about the fact that people are struggling to do their own work, to raise their families, and to deliver their council work. And if we want Plymouth City Council to look like Plymouth and to represent all of Plymouth, then all of Plymouth has got to feel that they can play a part. So if we're shutting the door on people and saying, sorry, we're full, can't have any more of you, I think that sends out the wrong message. And at a time when people have never needed their councillors more to be saying we don't need more councillors, I think is, again, sends the wrong message out. So, Lord Mayor, it gives me great pleasure to support this submission, to praise the work once again of the electoral services people who've done this work without fear or favour, without partisanship, and to support their efforts and their recommendations to put to the Boundary Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. We'll move to the vote now. Please vote using the buttons on your unit: green for favour, red for against, and amber to abstain. The motion, pardon me, the motion is carried with 4 abstentions. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to the close for today. I look forward to seeing you again in September.